Hello everyone, my name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today we are talking about negotiations. Negotiations. If you have that on your Evie Lupine channel bingo card, chances are you are doing pretty well for yourself, and it's not for any outlandish reason. Like, negotiation is a really important aspect of the BDSM process. But something that I have noticed quite a bit in comments on my channel, in messages from patrons in general in the world of BDSM, is that a lot of people feel really restricted by the so-called stereotypical negotiation process. And that is something I want to get into today. I want to talk about potential alternatives to the traditional negotiation style that I've talked about in some of my videos and that you are probably most familiar with. Some people love the concept of sitting down and filling out 100 question long forms and exchanging limit lists and taking tests online and having notebooks filled with paperwork about all the different things about all the people they play with. Some people, that is absolutely exhausting. Some people don't have the time or the energy or the motivation to sit down and talk for hours and hours and hours before the play even starts. And I just want to say that that is totally understandable. That is totally something that I can get behind. I know especially sometimes it feels like we're spending more time talking about the play than we are actually playing. So again, what I want to do today is offer a way that maybe you can rethink about the way that you do negotiations to hopefully maybe take a little bit less time, to maybe be a little bit more inclusive of some things that a lot of other negotiation styles leave out, and just in general be a little bit more free than some of the other concepts that you might have been introduced to before. As well, if you are somebody who really likes your lists and your check boxes and your notebooks full of ideas and concepts and other things, this is totally something that is for you as well. There are many concepts I'm going to be talking about today that can be used in addition to a traditional negotiation style as well as instead of. But before I get too far into this, I also just want to make sure that I talk about what I mean when I say a traditional negotiation style. Now, this totally varies by region, I am sure. So when I say a traditional negotiation style, I am thinking about when a top and a bottom, or dom and a sub, whatever labels, sit down together, and they usually have sheets of paper or notebooks or pens, or maybe they're talking over Skype and taking notes on Google Docs or something like that. They're sitting down and they are asking questions. Sometimes this is more top driven, so it's literally the top comes in with a set of questions that they have developed, and like the submissive types in or writes out their response to those questions. Sometimes it is a little bit more back and forth. And then as well, it is something where there tends to be a lot of talks about limits and boundaries and safe words and aftercare needs and what play explicitly isn't wanted and what play explicitly is wanted. P.S. video about explicit versus implicit negotiation. That will be down in the description box below if you want to check that out. But basically, it tends to be a little bit more formulaic. It can feel a little bit more robotic. It can feel more interchangeable. I feel like it's something that really centers itself around the questions as opposed to centering it around the person you are going to be playing with. It's not going to be something like that. This is going to be something that's more emotionally centered, more feeling centered, more goal centered, maybe even something that is more about the people that are being played with as opposed to the types of play and the boundaries around that play. Now, not everybody has super deep emotional reasons for wanting to do a type of play, and that's totally fair as well. But if you are somebody who likes playing a little bit more on the darker side of things, if you like playing more with emotional and mental states in your play beyond just the more physical trappings of things, I think incorporating some of what I'm going to be talking about today is going to help you have way better scenes. And I would wager a guess, if you have been having trouble up to this point in your BDSM career, having good scenes, having fulfilling scenes, as a top or as a bottom, it's probably because you are ignoring those more emotional, those more feeling-centered aspects of doing BDSM. I think it's sometimes convenient to not have to talk about feelings when you do play and just like get right into it. But if you do talk about feelings, if you can really connect emotionally with your partner before you even start to scene, that I think for a lot of people is going to result in better outcomes, because you can really actually understand, okay, this is why my partner wants to do this thing, and that will change your approach, that will change your body language, that will change your nonverbal communication, and that can go a really, really long way into how either a top or a bottom interacts with the scene and what they ultimately get out of it. But what does a negotiation that is more feeling and people-centered actually include? Well, firstly, I want to emphasize that this is not necessarily a complete negotiation all on its own in terms of what I'm outlining in this video. I think no matter what style of negotiation you are going with, if in particular it's somebody you have never played with before, talking about experience in the scene, experience with the type of play that you are doing, talking about your mental or physical health status, talking about any potential healthcare needs that might happen, or the presence or not of health insurance, you know, talking about limits and boundaries and potential triggers if that's something that might happen. Talking about all of those things, super important no matter what your negotiation style is. And so those very core fundamentals I'm not going to specifically mention, but if you've never talked to them with your partner before, it is really important you go over all those things. And I do have additional videos about negotiation if you want to know more about those very, very important points that you should be remembering to go over. So link to that will be down below. But anyways, things that this negotiation style has in it that I think are important to talk about. Number one would be, how are you feeling? I think it's great to start by asking a question to your partner about how they feel. Now, this sort of relies on the fact that your partner will be honest with you. Not everybody can be that. Some people are just like, yeah, I'm fine. And yeah, I'm fine could mean I had an amazing day, or it could mean I had the worst day ever. Hopefully, however, if you are deciding to engage in BDSM play, your partner can be a little bit more honest with you than that, and then maybe they did have an amazing day. Maybe they had a really tough day at work and they're feeling kind of lethargic. Maybe they didn't get enough sleep last night. Maybe they're feeling really dehydrated. Just something to kind of clue you in about, okay, here's kind of the state of the person I'm playing with. Now, this is more tailored to like if you're immediately about to play within the next couple hours. If you are negotiating in advance, it's a good idea to maybe ask this before the scene starts, just as kind of like a last minute check-in, which is a good idea no matter what. This is not to say that if somebody's having like a bad day or has struggled with something that you shouldn't play with them at all. That is up to you as a player, what your risk profile is. Depending on things, you might want to change specific elements of the scene, but it's just something to keep in mind, because somebody's mental state going into a negotiation might impact how they answer certain questions, or might impact the sorts of play that they're interested in at that time. So just something I think is a good practice to get into. Number two would be, tonight I want to be. You would be amazed how easy it is to go through an entire negotiation without explicitly mentioning what your roles are. Yes, you can have an entire conversation with somebody talking about how amazing rope is and how amazing it feels to get tied up, and you still might not know at the end who's the top and who's the bottom. And it would be pretty damn awkward to show up to a scene with both of you expecting you're both going to be tied up. In order to avoid that confusion, I would highly recommend you start out by explicitly saying, here's what I'm looking for tonight, here is the role that I want to play. And that might mean that you want to be a dom, or a mommy, or a little, or a pet, or a slave, or human furniture, or something else. And having that out of the way makes sure that you're going to be compatible on whatever side of the slash you want to be on with this person. Now, you might also decide that you both want to be switches, and you want to switch fight it out, which is great. You can totally do that. Totally an option. But if you want to negotiate, say, an age play scene, probably a good idea to know ahead of time who's going to be what in that role, so the rest of the negotiation can be tailored around that expectation. Now, as well, like I've already sort of implied, this is a great way to get clued in on any sort of role play influences in the scene, any sort of flavor that the scene might have or lack thereof, if there might be power exchange or not, all good things to keep in mind to make sure that you're on the same page about what's going to be happening in the scene and the sort of vibe, the sort of feeling you want to create with that. Number three would be, I want to play with you because. This is also a super important one. If you're in a popular enough dungeon, chances are you can walk up to about anybody in that space and ask them for a spanking. So why this particular person? Why do you want to play with this human? What draws them to you? Is it something about their energy? Is it the way that they dress? Did you see them do a scene earlier that you really enjoyed the energy of? Do they have a reputation for a certain kind of play that you're really curious about? What are your exact motivations for playing with this person? This is very important. I know, especially hearing a lot from tops about this, some people just want to ride the top merry-go-round. And as a top, sometimes you're game for that. Sometimes you're like, I don't have the energy for that. I need more connection as a top. And as a bottom, it can be a good way of maybe weeding out potential predators or people you're not super compatible with. Do they want to play with you because you look really hot tonight? Do they want to play with you because they really admire some of your photographs on FetLife? And are those motivations compatible with your own? Can you be on the same page about what you want out of a scene? Some people, for example, play with a lot of sexual elements in their scene, and they like playing with people because they like having a way of expressing that sexual energy. Some people, totally no sex involved. They like playing for just pure sensory reasons or for aesthetic reasons, for a million other things that aren't sex. And especially with that, it's really important to be synced up about what your motivations are, why you want to play with this person, and I think it really establishes a personal connection. It's not just about the fact that they are a top and you are a bottom, but why you are the particular bottom for this scene that you are creating, why you are the particular top for this scene you are creating, and really acknowledging that everybody is their own independent person. Everybody has different things that they're going to be bringing into a scene, and in particular, if you don't want to be interchangeable with anybody else, if you don't like feeling like the top on the merry-go-round or the bottom merry-go-round, talking to a person and figuring out, do they even really know what they want from the scene? Do they know why you? Because I don't know about you guys, I wouldn't really want to play with a person where if I asked them, why do you want to play with me? If they just said, I don't know, because you seem nice or something, I wouldn't really want to continue negotiating. That's not like a confident enough answer for me. And I think it is certainly not a positive thing for everybody if answers are along the lines of like, I don't know, just because, are they playing with you because they are motivated to play with you, or because you seemed available and approachable and they are really, really desperate for anybody to play with them? All right, number 4 is I want to feel / I want to experience. Yes, we are talking about feelings before we even get into the types of play that we're talking about. This is totally backwards from most negotiation processes, but this is not your typical negotiation process. An answer to this question might be something along the lines of, I want to feel humiliated. I want to experience a flogging for the first time. I want to feel catharsis. I want to feel owned. I want to feel cared for. I think it's really important in order to be fully compatible for play and understand the types of scenes that you're creating, that you know what the motivation of the people you're playing with is before you get into that scene. And a really big way of knowing that is getting into what sort of feeling you want to have. You could ask 5 people what types of play that they want to do, and they could all say caning, and they could all have very different motivations for why they want a caning at that moment with the person they're playing with. So understanding those motivations can really help you get more into exactly what you can use to tailor and create this scene experience. Now, because this style does emphasize the result, the feeling of play versus the specific toys used, I think it is important to include another step, which would be, this is what makes me feel blank. Now, this is a great way if you are a self-knowledgeable bottom, if you already have experience, to really help your top understand what tools they can use for that particular scene. So for example, if you are somebody who needs to feel catharsis, you could say, I want to feel catharsis during this scene. I feel that when I am caned until I cry. Now, if you are somebody who is not going maybe more for the feeling thing, but is experiencing something for the first time, you might phrase something along the lines of, I want to experience a flogging for the first time tonight, and I am hopeful about it. I am nervous. Kind of go more into the experience you want to have, and then the feelings you're currently having in that moment about that experience. If you want to experience a specific type of scene, something else you could do is say, I want to feel cared and loved for in a scene, and I'm curious if rope might be a way of allowing that thing to happen. Now with all of this, with these last two things I have mentioned, it is also really important for a robust negotiation process to include the things that you don't want to feel, the things you don't want to experience. If you want to have a really like kind, loving scene, it's probably good to say, I don't want to feel afraid during the scene. Or for example, if maybe caning is something that brings up negative emotions for you, you could say, I don't want to feel afraid in this scene. Using canes makes me feel that way, it creates a negative response, so let's not include that. So depending on the type of negotiation process you like having, there can be ways where you can make this more tailored around limits and boundaries, although ideally with this negotiation style, you have already talked about any limits and boundaries that you have around play, so those are already understood to not be a possibility during this negotiation process. Now we are getting into number 6, which is I want you. This is definitely probably the most taboo part of this entire process. I am suggesting it is super rare for anybody to be upfront about what they want other people to do for them. Even as a dom, it is something that not a lot of people talk about. It can be super intimidating if you have been crushing on that dom across the room at every single munch for 6 months and you're finally like, oh my gosh, we're gonna play together, to just say, I want you to hurt me like you hate me. Like, that's a super vulnerable thing to say, but I think it is also important, again, for like understanding of the scene that you are constructing, that you can talk about, here is the way that I'm hoping you are going to act during the scene, or here are some possibilities for ways that maybe I would want you to act during this scene. So for example, you might want to say things like, I want you to hurt me like you hate me. I want you to act very caring and loving. I want you to be cold and distant. I want you to feel unapproachable. I want you to beg me for it. If you are on the dom side of things and using this negotiation process, I want you to grovel. I want you to kiss my boots. I want you to set up the scene before we get started. There's a lot of different things you could include in this bracket, but it's a good way of understanding not only how you are going to be acting during the scene, but what you're hoping the other person is going to act like as well. And again, I want to emphasize, because I haven't mentioned this yet, the negotiation process does not mean you are locked into doing a scene with somebody. And so it's super important during all this, when you're talking, that you can kind of come to an understanding of if you are really compatible or not. If you are talking through this and this person wants you to do something that you are totally not capable of, that it's not something you feel comfortable with, that's a type of energy you don't have with them, great. Now you know, you can talk about it, you can negotiate for something else, or you can decide, okay, we're not compatible, it was great to talk to you, thank you for doing this with me, and then, you know, save each other time, move on to somebody else. Not every negotiation results in a scene, and I don't want anybody to act like when they go into a negotiation, okay, this scene is absolutely 100% going to happen. And until, and even during, when the scene is going on, you always have the ability to step away and say, I'm not comfortable with this anymore. Another thing you can do to kind of help with this whole aspect of I want you to is to also talk about things like, I want you to surprise me, or I want you to not surprise me, or I want you to treat me like an equal, or I want you to not play mind games with me. Also, lots of other ways you can incorporate your particular boundaries and limits into this particular scene space. My 7th suggestion would be to say, my goals for the scene are. This is very similar to the previous suggestion to talk about feelings, but this is a little bit more physically oriented. So this is a great time to talk about, I want to have marks. I want to be able to cry. I want to be able to surpass my limits. I want to try something I've never tried before. I want to see exactly what my pain threshold is. There are lots of different goals you can have during the scene. Sometimes it's as simple as, I want to have a fun time. I want to feel more connected. You know, it doesn't have to be super big and super complicated, but again, it's one of those things that goes into tailoring the whole scene, and if you have compatible goals, that's great, and it also kind of allows the top to know kind of, okay, here's maybe how I should focus in this particular direction. And so you can talk about things like, okay, you say you have a goal for marks, how can we achieve that? What are tools we can use for that? What have you experienced in the past? Or has nothing worked and you're looking for ways to finally be able to make that happen? And then finally, number 8 is after the scene, what I want/need is. And then this is a way to talk about what your aftercare needs are. Do you need to be left alone? Do you want chocolate? Do you want water? Do you want cuddles? Do you want a text message? Do you want to talk over FetLife? Everybody has different aftercare needs. I have a bunch of videos talking about this. Link to it will be down below. Also, great opportunity to talk about potential top drop or sub drop, especially if you are playing with those more emotional things, playing with more mental things. Sub drop can be different than maybe you've experienced before. Drop can be more intense than maybe what you've experienced before. So it's really, really important to talk about that if you have never done so before with this particular person, or if you're trying a new scene, maybe you don't know exactly what your reaction is going to be. But yeah, lots of things you can do there. This is basically what I wanted to talk about in today's video. There's a lot more I could get into. If you are motivated by this type of negotiation style, if you like something that is person focused, feeling focused, you can really run with this. And depending on your style, as a top, as a bottom, as a whatever, you can add more questions onto this. If you are negotiating in more of a DS framework, there's a lot more things you could add onto this list. This is more for like pickup play or for casual play with a new person. If you are going deeper, if you are going into a more intense experience, the more questions you're going to have to ask. So feel free to customize this, add in your own questions, leave things out you don't think are necessary, all of that stuff. This is all about suggestions, tools that you can use in your BDSM toolkit to make scenes that work for you and work for the people you are playing with. So hopefully you found this interesting and helpful. If you did, let me know down in the comment section below. Also, if you have any comments or suggestions about anything, including things in this video, I would love to hear that. You can leave that down below as well. If you like this video, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. I make videos twice a week. And finally, if you want to support this channel, if you want to see more videos like this one, you can support me over on Patreon. That is what makes this possible. I also have a lot of extra videos on there, photo shoots, Discord chat, all of that. So if you haven't already, please go to the description box below. Link will be there. If you already support me on there, thank you so, so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you guys next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.